Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. You are welcome to this second journey to the source. After having met the French group and the Spanish group, we are now in journey with the English group and in communion with the whole congregation of Assumption. During our last conference on the source, we left Auteuil, the mother house, after the War of 1870. After these troubled times, Auteuil was living a more serene era, which allowed foundations, notably in Italy in 1888, Nicaragua and Philippines in 1892, El Salvador in 1895, and new foundations in countries where the Assumption was already present, like France, Spain, England. In 1888, with the death of Mother Thérèse Emmanuel and the approval of the constitutions, that same year, Marie Eugénie and the congregation experienced a turning point. During the general chapter of 1894, the priest, who was the president over the chapter, was delighted to find such a complete union between all of the sisters. Not the slightest division, he said, not the slightest human aspect was felt during this chapter of 1894. During this same chapter, Marie Eugénie then expressed a desire to have a vicar to assist her. I am old, she said. The years weigh on me. I need to have a mother with me to help me. And Mary Celestine of the Good Shepherd, a Scottish sister, was elected. Mother Marie Eugénie would gradually withdraw while remaining close to the communities. Now I just have to be good, she was saying. As we know, she died on March 10 of 1898. And 2 days later, Mother Marie Celestine wrote to the congregation, "The Assumption without her seemed impossible to us. And indeed, that could not be. We have her in our midst. We will talk to her constantly. We feel that she is listening to us, that she is watching over us." During this chapter of 1898, after the death of Marie Eugénie, the priest presiding over the chapter evokes the silence of Marie Eugénie during her last months, a silence by which her soul retreated within itself, in humility, in the sacrifice of her personality, a silence that she loved and that she seemed to have adopted as a line of conduct. After this evocation of Marie Eugénie during the chapter, then went on the election of the new Superior General, who, unsurprisingly, nominates Mother Marie Celestine, the one who was the vicar of Marie Eugénie. In fact, Marie Eugénie must guide the congregation in uncertain times. The political situation in France, the relations between church and state had been unstable for a long time. Europe was like an inferno about to burn. Marie Eugénie had known the first manifestation of the persecutions. She had feared since 1870s. And since that time, she considered finding in Belgium a refuge in the event of disturbance. She had also in mind other countries. After a first alert in 1880, with a momentary expulsion from France of male religious orders, the threat of a more general rupture remains. Then a law called the law of abonnement in French, law of subscription, we could say, obliged the congregations to pay a big amount in taxes. And unlike many other congregations, Marie Celestine very quickly positions herself for the resistance against this law. Why does she position like this? Because Marie Eugénie told her one day, they want me to be against the resistance. And no, not me. I want us to resist. Mother Marie Celestine will even go as far as Rome, where she wants to hear the Pope's point of view, from which she obtains this response. Since you are in resistance, you are in the truth. You are in obedience. Go all the way, no matter what. This dialogue will decide the position of Mother Marie Celestine during all the events that will follow. She affirmed this position during the General Chapter of 19, which took place in Auteuil. And we have here in Auteuil the notebook where Marie Celestine has dictated a point of view for the sisters to understand why she was resisting. It was such a great big decision, and the sisters had to understand very well. After this law of subscription, a law has just been passed which forced the congregation to ask for an authorization. They had to be authorized to exist. And those who are not, means to say, because they refuse to apply for authorization, have their property confiscated by the authorities of the state. And this is the case of Assumption. From 1900, a seizure of the goods of the congregation was therefore ordered by the authorities. The Auteuil property was auctioned on March 28, 91. And we have the poster of the sale by the state of the property of Auteuil. It was put in all Paris for people to know that they could buy this big property. After many twists and turns, which could have caused Auteuil to fall into hands of buyers dangerous for the Assumption, at the end of nights and days of adoration, of prayer, on June 20, 1901, the state sells the property. Mr. Pacelli, an Italian banker whose daughter is a student at the Assumption of Rome, purchases it. And the congregation becomes its tenant in Auteuil. So far, Auteuil seems to be in good hands, as this man knows very well Assumption. After the property, the authorities of the state visited again Auteuil to make the inventory of all our goods. Everything was inside the walls of the property. We have an account in the archives of these visits, and it is a real theater piece. You can see the sisters who are putting the documents, who are hiding the document to put them in safety, Marie Celestine and Mother Mary Catherine, her assistant, would use subterfuge for more than 2 hours, giving the visitors a runaround through the whole house, conceding new papers, making believe that she did not have the list of the sisters. It was a struggle to protect the more things possible. Despite this resistance, this strong resistance, the persecution reached its peak in 1904, when the law was passed prohibiting all educational institutions run by the congregations in France. All the congregation who wanted to maintain education had to leave the country. And so, in Auteuil, the novitiate and the student must leave the house. And therefore, all the communities in France where there was a school had to leave. To go where? To a place that I now invite you to discover. This place, the monastery of Val Notre Dame in Belgium, is a Cistercian abbey founded at the beginning of the 13th century. In 1202, by Count Albert de Morat. This Count, Albert de Morat, started the construction of a large monastery and called the Sisters Bernardines to assume it. The Abbey of Val is recognized in the chronicles of the Order of Citeaux, the Cistercian order, as one of the flagships of the order. From its beginnings, the abbey was consecrated to the Virgin. The Holy Mary, Virgin Mary, protected the abbey from revolutions, even if the nuns had to withdraw at the end of 18th century. When the horizon darkened in France, according to what I have said before, Mother Marie Celestine was looking for a refuge abroad, in particular for the novitiate, I have already said. And Father Picard, the General Superior of Assumptionist Father, was also looking for a place. He had visited this place of Val Notre Dame, and he didn't want to go there. He told her about this place, and Marie Celestine will say later, from the first moment, I understood that the abbey was for us, and that Mary herself called the Assumption there. She went to visit the abbey and found that it fulfilled all the necessary conditions. The deed of sale was signed on August 6, 1901. Thus was fulfilled a wish of Mother Marie Eugénie that I have spoken about before, to find a refuge for the sisters in Belgium. The arrival of the Assumption, after some 100 years of interruption of religious life, gives the Val a breath of gospel air. We keep in the archives the annals of the foundations of the Val, written day by day by the sisters. In these annals, we can find on August 20, 1902, Feast of Saint Bernard, that the fundraisers had gone to Mass in the village of Antey, near the Val, with Mother Marie Celestine and Mother Marie Catherine. And when, after Mass, the parish priest gifted them with a statue of Our Lady of the Val, Notre-Dame du Val, a miraculous Virgin that had been preserved during the 107 years of absence of a community. Mother Marie Celestine herself carried it in her arms under the pouring rain to bring the statue in the Val. In fact, this small statue was greatly venerated since a long time by the former abbesses. And it had been a source of great graces and miracles, a companion during all the trials that the community would experience in the Val. That same day, on their way home, the sisters met a poor man who said to them, "Welcome, sisters. I wish you peace, the peace that Jesus Christ gave to his apostles. I ask it for you." In fact, peace is one of the most marked characteristics of the atmosphere of the Val. Not only because of the distance from a noisy center or the noise of nature, no, but also because of the peace which comes from Christ. Interior peace, so precious in troubled times that the community will have to face there. Peace, the poor, and the Virgin. Three threads that I invite you to weave by discovering what the Assumption experienced in Val Notre-Dame. And a fourth one will be contemplative life. The first days gave the tone of this contemplative life by the installation of phrases, spiritual thoughts, or name of saints above the doors of the cells of the sisters to welcome the arrivals, the new arrivals. So perhaps now we can push the door of this place and discover it. You have already seen the monastery and the wood around it, the gates to enter in the property. The chapel, before it was rebuilt and changed, renewed. And the big entrance, the hall, the place for the welcome. One of the characteristics of the place is the cold weather. In December 1902, the cold surprised us, write the sisters, with great intensity. The river is completely frozen. The children of the village skate there on the river. Everything is covered with snow. In one of the cells, the holy water is frozen in the stoup. In this context, it was in 1904, as we have said, that the novitiate of Auteuil was transferred and the boarding school opened, almost entirely made up of children from Auteuil. A sister said that it was like the springtime of Val Notre-Dame. To live this trip from Auteuil to Val-Notre-Dame as an experience of discovery, despite the dramatic situation and hearts heavy with anxiety. The sisters even composed a little travel book which give historical explanations on each of the important towns that they had to traverse from Auteuil to Val-Notre-Dame. This is the small books. With all the name of the place in red and the explanation. So this move from Auteuil to Val-Notre-Dame, which was not a nice experience, became like a touristic travel. We were in 1904. In 1907, so the arrival of the sisters in charge of the day school of Paris, and a number of its students whom their parents preferred to send across borders rather than deprive them of the Assumption education. So the boarding school became bigger. It was declared as a French boarding school, and the sisters had to wait until the end of the First World War to obtain permission from the Belgian government to receive Belgian students. At the beginning of 1907, the Val became the mother house of the Assumption, since the sister could not stay anymore in Auteuil. That is to say, the headquarters of the General Superior, the Superior General, and her assistant. Life there is now punctuated by entries into the postulancy, into the novitiate, by the celebrations of religious professions, which are always an opportunity to share with the students the joy of consecrated life. All the opportunities were taken to share this beauty of religious life with the students. We can see also in the annals that the day of recreation are a real festival of creativity. They make theater, hide and seek, raffle for the poor, musical mornings, processions, concerts, choral singing, in particular et verbum that we well know, literary sessions, and also even bird charmers or pictures, diaporama with the pictures of the country of Christ. Everything to open the mind of the students. So sisters and students live there and will live there to the realm also of modern inventions, which were delighting everybody and always with doing good in mind. So a telephone appeared in the hall in 1905. Fire extinguishers in 1914. A cinematograph in 1929, especially for documentary films. A radio was set in 1933, and do you know why? To hear the message of the Holy Father to the whole world. A gramophone, phonograph, and a few records of the choir of a monastery in 1931. Place of tradition, place of modernity. There were also epidemics like measles and flu, weakening students and nuns until they could not longer sing the office in the choir. February 21, 1915, we can read, no high mass, no Saint Vespers. The two refectories are joined together. They were both half empty, because today, Mother told us there are 6 sisters, 43 sick sisters, or in convalescence. In 1980, in this context, the general chapter took place in Rome. The horizon looks dark for Europe, and the threats of war are growing stronger. Mother Marie Celestine does not cease inviting the sisters to serve the church by praying, to prepare themselves through prayer. She is writing, prayer first. I urge you as a special practice this year. It will be our strength, our means of serving the church, our best weapon against the enemies who are preparing to attack us with fury. Our power over the heart of God Himself, to obtain pity and mercy. The trials of the church will always have a great resonance in the heart of each child of the Assumption. The office is an all-powerful prayer. It is the prayer of the universal church. Let us include all our intentions in the recitation of each hour of the office. I believe that you will do immense good in the church by opening the way of prayer to the souls with whom you are in contact. This invitation to prayer, to a fervent liturgy, is a route marked out for all the sisters of the congregation, especially for those of the Mother House in Val Notre Dame, where over the years will be experienced a great deepening of our liturgical life through conferences, through the very grace of these places marked by the Cistercian tradition. Yes, there was a really contemplative atmosphere in this place, and we can feel it while we are looking some pictures. Thus, in this troubled context, the Val, between 1907 and 1914, began to play its role as a place of communion. Communion with Auteuil, because from time to time sisters would go to Paris to organize meetings for the children of Mary who didn't came to Belgium, and also because Sister Marie Dolores, the General Bossa, Spanish, stayed to look after the house and organize the Villa Saint-Michel. That was a boarding house for ladies, for old ladies. And she would return to Val sometimes to take batteries, recharge batteries in Val. Also, a place of communion with distant countries to which the sisters are sent, and from where postulants and novices came. Thus, in addition to departing for places where the Assumption already exists, missionaries will live to found also in Denmark in 1908 and in Brazil in 1910. Communion with the congregation through the trips of the Superior General. For example, it is from the Val that Mother Marie Celestine leaves for Nicaragua and El Salvador at the end of 1912. She will embark for 22 days of travel. And she said, it's a real joy for me to think that I can give the consolation of a visit to these dear daughters who have devoted themselves with so much courage and self-denied to the works of the Assumption in these distant countries, and this for many years, without having seen anyone coming from the Mother House. This travel of Marie Celestine the first of a large series of many travels of our general superiors to all the countries, gave the opportunity to make an album. They were describing what was the trip, by boat, sure, and with picture, they would describe this boat that she took, and then the place she visited. A way of communication, right? It will be followed, as I said, by many other visits during the years. And also, we can feel communion with the church. Thanks to the multiple visits of ecclesiastics who shared their vision of the church and the questions which animated them. And it was like, a sister say, a feast for the intelligence. For the sisters, these visits were an opportunity to ask questions, to consider things from a new angle, to be nourished by the competence of the visitors during meetings lasting 1 or 2 hours in a place that was called Congo. Sometimes they would receive a very concrete sign of the bond that links the sisters to the church. As on January 18, 1912, on that day, we can read in the annals, great emotions. Our mother has just received a small package. It contains a book, rather thin, bound in thin white paper with a gold border, and on the first page, she reads these words, Deus te benedicat, may God bless you. P10. It is the Pope's own psalter, the one he has been using since Christmas, that the Pope himself was sending to Mother Mary Celestine. Deus te benedicat. This psalter illustrates the liturgical reform that Pius X had just announced to the Church, and which will be implemented with enthusiasm in the Val. After the psalter received by Mary Celestine from the Pope, it is all the sisters who receive the new psalters, as the annals of January 27, 1912 indicate. And these new psalters are objects of sharing during community meetings. Everybody was studying, was trying to understand. And to this, they are adding frequent lectures on the Psalms and other liturgical questions. They write in the annals, once again, we feel very much daughters of the Church, happy to obey the first word from Rome. In that moment, after the year 1912, 1913, the Val went through many dangers, but the main danger was coming. The First World War was declared in 1914. The Val is at the heart of this turmoil which will hit Europe head-on. It will take countless hours to resort what made up the daily life of this community. We have to make choice to tell the story. The boarding school, which was first closed to protect the students, returns to life in slow motion. And on October 5th, 1915, the day of the reopening, we can read in the annals, it is a joy to see the boarding school moving on again. However small it may be, 5 students. And we feel that the Lord has made us for a life of prayer, but also apostolic. Life is still cadenced there despite everything by the feast day, like a great family life. In that context, an attempt was also made to set up an ambulance, means a sort of hospital in the convent. But on February 5th, 1915, the sisters received from the village the order to remove the Red Cross flag and the license plate from the ambulance for the hospital. In the midst of these tribulations, the community of the Val appears as a permanent place of intercession for peace and for the world. In 1905, they pray for France, sure, and for the persecution. But then in 1914, 1915, they would pray as the whole church and cries out for mercy to God. And according to the details of the Holy Father, the Miserere was sung and the High Mass was offered to pray for peace, to ask for forgiveness and mercy for the world, all during this 5 years war. And the prayer for peace was joined to the search for peace in relationships. January 1st, 1917, we can read, the recreation takes place very fraternally. Each one seeks to please others, to make people forget the anguish, the holiness, the absence of male, and so many other things that have waited on earth for so long. The sisters have also to live isolation, and the lack of news are compounded by the separations. Many sisters have to leave the place. The novitiate itself will go back to France, and the sisters receive very few news from the people and from the sisters who left. The sisters and the few little girls who are living with them have also to learn to live in difficult situations. Eat, face the cold, share food widely. In February 4th, 1917, we can read difficulties of all kinds in obtaining charcoal, flour, and vegetables. 8 days after, they say, it only remains to be seen whether we are destined to starve. Let us wait again. August 12, 1919. This evening, during the obedience, Mother Agnes made an announcement which broke her maternal heart. Sisters, I am sorry to tell you that we have no more provision of flour. We will therefore have to stick to the common ration. Each will find in her place in the morning 300 grams of bread, and will have to be satisfied with it for the day. Pray to the Blessed Virgin to send us flour this week. And the Virgin always gave to the sisters something to eat. In this situation, there were welcoming a lot of refugees. Old women, sick women, a woman with her child who was sick. And they were serving them. And the few students who serve the refugees. The list could be long of these refugees that we can find in every page. In this adversity, the intensity of religious life that illustrates the perseverance in the face of our sisters is the main strength of the community. It will not be diminished by any event. And when they learn on the morning of November 11, 1918, of the signing of the armistice, there was joy and relief. And then they thank both Spain, whose flag has protected the Val Notre-Dame for all these years, thanks to the friendship of Marie Celestine with the country of Spain, where she was superior. She had been superior for many times. And they would also thank Our Lady of the Val, Queen and Mother of this abbey, their companion during all these months. After the war, the departure for the foundation can resume. Return to Lyon, Colmar, Philadelphia in 1919. The international novitiate is reconstituted the same year. But in 1921, the illness and then the death of Mother Marie Celestine again sounded the death knell for sadness. She died on April 12, 1921. Mother Marie Celestine was elected. Mother Marie Catherine was elected in September 1921. And Mother Marie Catherine herself died in Rome on December 15. So that the same year, the congregation must consent to being orphaned twice. Mother Marie Joanna will be elected by correspondence in 1922 and then re-elected in 1933. And she's the one who must experience once again the painful episode of the sale of Auteuil. Mr. Pacelli had made a project of sale to some Americans for a good deed, as he was saying. But fortunately, that was not possible. And the congregation did not have enough money to compete with these wealthy suitors. Even if the wish was to keep the complete property, the congregation only bought a part of the property, the Petit Couvent, the Villa Saint-Michel, where we are now. And they left the rest of the property to the family of Mr. Pacelli. His children wanted to divide the property and to sell it, to make possible constructions. That's why only remains a small convent, and the big monastery that you have seen in the source one has been destroyed. In 1931, the congregation communed with Spain in the grip of civil war. The convent of Malaga is ransacked and then set on fire. The sisters are writing, "You are anxiously waiting for news from our houses in Spain. Nothing like this has ever happened." Multiple news and questions will follow. So far, the Val is increasingly becoming the mother house, the beloved place, the center where everything converges. The general chapters held there now tighten the links. In 1924, Mother Marie Joanna had during a chapter referred to the Val as the home of each one of us. And even the General Superior of the Assumptionist Fathers says on August 2nd, 1928, as he is visiting the Val, "Yes, this is indeed the mother house of all the Assumptions. Yes, you are really the first. You are indeed our elders." So the Val becomes the heart of the Assumption in motion. The consecration of the chapel in 1933. Here you can see the blessing of the first stone. The Jubilee of the 100 years of the foundation in 1939 are events in which the dynamism of the congregation, and especially the desire for a religious life, are manifested as strong as it is contemplative, combining tradition and modernity, in line with what was going on in 19th century in Auteuil. But the world is still in fusion. At the end of the general chapter of 1939, the sisters had to anticipate the return to their countries before war breaks out. At the time of the invasion of Belgium, during the World War II, in May 1940, the students were immediately sent home. The sisters would immediately organize the war ambulance hospital. They received their hundreds of wounded persons. And the 10 children who were remaining were placed in a willing family to take care of them. Again, we could say 1,000 things about this war, but I would just like to evoke the memory of that day in May 1940, when the sisters were thinking that they were destined to die. It is written in the annals. During a night, when the danger seems to be great, the sisters take refuge in the cellar with the statue of Our Lady of the Val. Each one is given a little money in the event of a hasty departure the next morning, and some indication of the route to follow are also given. Sisters then experience a Pentecostal Mass, which will take place in the cellar, worthy of the catacombs. That night, they made the renewal of vows and confession there, as before dying. And they had to live in the cellar with 80 refugees. They organized the life there. And they cover the basement windows and install mattresses so that our refugees, they say, are well settled tonight. The urgency further increases the sensitivity and attention towards those who are welcomed. It is not just about welcoming them, it's about welcoming them so that they may be as comfortable as possible. Then the abbey was invaded by German officers who looted the monastery. They planned to flee. For some time, Mother Marie Denise, who was not still at that time Superior General, remains alone with 4 sisters to guard the Val. The novitiate was divided into several groups. One in Spain, with the Spanish and the Spanish-speaking novices in Miracruz. Others in France, where they have found refuge in properties made available by France, and where they move according to the move of German army, according to imminent danger, I would say, and another novitiate in free zone in France. Perhaps the most astonishing is that postulants still enter during the war. I will not say more for lack of time, but I hope that the conference will have made you want to know more about this period and to read the booklets Il y a 100 ans, 100 ago, that you can find in French, I'm sorry, or in Spanish, some of them, on the website of the congregation. When the sisters returned to the Val after the Second War, it will be to celebrate the General Chapter of 1947. In that chapters, decision will then make possible to take a decisive step towards internationality. We can say that internationality is a mysterious fruit of the exodus due to the war. For example, the capitulants decide to maintain the plurality of novitiates, but to keep the unity of spirit, bringing together each year for 4 or 5 months a certain number of young professors from the various novitiates, sort of third year. And also they think about a new position, that of a vicar superior for each country, who can give the superiors who depend on them some permissions, and who can also visit the houses of this country. It inaugurates what will be organized later, the provinces. During this period, we should also speak about the immense work of the sisters to prepare the process of beatification of Mother Marie Eugénie. Here is one of the examples of the notes of Mother Marie Joanna. In this paper, she is answering the question, who is Father Combalo? There were also celebrations like the Jubilee of Mother Mary Joanna, the proclamation of the dogma of the Assumption, the celebration of the 50 years of the presence in the Val. The road is open for a new step, which will be secretly prepared until the election of Mother Marie Denise in 1953. There, then, it will be the time for a new start, a more massive departure towards the missions and the return to Auteuil. But it is not the topic of today, and this will be for another time. I thank you for your presence today. I hope you enjoyed this conference. I have to thank Sister Stella Sanz for the translation of the text of this conference into English. And I give you rendezvous now in Zoom. You should have received the link to now be in contact with all our assembly over the world and share together. So see you after 5 minutes on Zoom. Goodbye and thank you.